The desolation of Glacier 9 stretched before them as the Academy shuttle descended through the permanent cloud layer. Perpetual twilight glinted off endless fields of blue-white ice beneath them, a deadly expanse that had claimed the lives of unprepared explorers since its discovery 3 decades ago. This world, with its average temperature of -120 degrees Celsius, stood as the Orion sector's most unforgiving ice planet, a barren testing ground for only the most elite cadets of the Interstellar Survival Academy. Erin Mallory pressed her face to the viewport, studying the terrain with a quiet intensity that set her apart from the dozen alien cadets surrounding her. As Earth's first human representative to the Academy, she carried the weight of her species' reputation on her shoulders. The shuttle lurched in a gust of stratospheric wind, causing several cadets to grip their harnesses tighter. But Erin remained still, her eyes tracking the contours of snowdrifts and the shadows of ice crevasses with practiced precision. Glacier 9 will strip the flesh from your bones in under 2 minutes of direct exposure, Commander Vorik announced, his reptilian voice carrying the dry rasp of his desert homeworld. The scales along his neck flushed a deeper red as he activated the briefing holograms. Your exosuits are rated for 6 hours of continuous protection against these conditions. But that assumes optimal functioning. Vorik's clawed hand gestured to the projected map of Zone Theta 7, their designated landing area. Each cadet team will deploy smart shelters, establish a survival perimeter, and maintain life-sustainable conditions until extraction in 48 hours. The magnetic storms in this region are unpredictable. Be prepared for communications disruption. Erin felt the familiar weight of scrutiny as Vorik's vertical pupils lingered on her. Unlike the other cadets with their sleek, tech-heated exosuits, Erin had chosen the expedition gear of her ancestors. Layers of insulated fabric beneath a canvas parka, fur-lined boots, and mittens designed to trap body heat. No electronic heating elements, no smart fabrics, no auxiliary power systems. Some of us, Vorik continued with barely concealed skepticism, have chosen to test alternative survival methodologies. A crystalline chitter of amusement rippled through the cabin. Erin identified it immediately as coming from Zeal, the silicon-based cadet whose translucent body refracted light with each movement. Perhaps the human thinks to impress us with a primitive display, Zeal said, vocal crystals vibrating to form words. Or perhaps she merely wishes to become the first human ice statue on Glacier 9. Erin said nothing. She had endured similar comments since her acceptance to the Academy. Earth's technology was considered quaint at best, archaic at worst, among the galactic community. Her presence here was political, a gesture of inclusion toward humanity's recent admission to the Stellar Confederation. But her survival would be anything but symbolic. The shuttle's descent thrusters engaged, kicking up a cloud of ice crystals that enveloped the craft. Through the swirling white, Erin caught a final glimpse of the landscape, pristine, ancient, and utterly indifferent to their arrival. Zone Theta 7 reached, announced the ship's AI. Prepare for deployment. The 12 cadets rose in unison, each activating their exosuits' environmental seals. Helmets materialized from collar units, encasing alien heads of various shapes. Atmospheric regulators hummed to life, and status indicators flickered across transparent faceplates. Only Erin stood without the reassuring glow of technology, her breath creating small clouds inside her fur-lined hood. Final equipment check, Commander Vorik ordered, his own tactical gear more advanced than the cadets. Smart shelters secured, emergency beacons activated, survival packs indexed. Affirmative responses echoed through the cabin. When it came to Erin, she simply nodded, patting the hand-woven pack at her side. Inside were simple tools, a bone knife, flint, several lengths of cord, a small canvas tarp, and other items that would have been familiar to her great-grandparents. The shuttle hatch hissed open, and the true face of Glacier 9 rushed in, a howling wall of wind carrying ice shards sharp enough to cut exposed flesh. The temperature plummeted instantly as the craft's environmental barriers failed to contain the brutal cold. "Deploy!" Vorik shouted over the roar of the blizzard. 48 hours begins now! One by one, the alien cadets leapt into the white void, their exosuits immediately engaging enhanced visual modes and stabilizers. Aaron watched as the crystalline form of Zeal flickered with internal energy reserves. The hovering shape of Lurax engaged gravitational dampeners, and the hulking Kargu activated thermal projectors that melted a landing spot in the ice below. When her turn came, Aaron didn't hesitate. She stepped into the storm unprotected by any technology beyond what humans had used for thousands of years. The cold hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath despite the layers of insulation. Her eyes watered instantly, the moisture threatening to freeze her lashes together. But she kept moving, leaning into the wind as her boots crunched through the surface crust of snow. The storm swallowed her whole, separating her from the other cadets within seconds. This was expected. The Academy valued individual problem-solving before team coordination. Through the whiteout, Aaron could barely make out the colorful energy signatures of alien tech as each cadet began establishing their survival position. Unlike her counterparts who would anchor themselves and deploy their shelters, Aaron needed to find what the land offered. Her eyes, already adjusting to the dim light filtering through the clouds, scanned for the telltale signs of a suitable snowbank, one deep enough and with the right consistency for her purposes. She located a promising formation on the leeward side of a gentle rise, where the wind had packed snow into a dense drift. Dropping to her knees, Aaron pulled a primitive tool from her pack, a long bone carved into a blade on one end. With practiced movements that her ancestors would have recognized, she began to carve blocks from the compacted snow. While the alien cadets deployed automated systems, Aaron worked methodically, her body heat building beneath her layers despite the cold, trying to leach it away. Block by block, she constructed the foundation of a shelter that humans had used in Arctic conditions for millennia. An igloo. Each snow block weighed approximately 20 kilograms, and by the 20th block, Aaron's muscles burned with exertion. But the circular wall grew steadily, and as it did, it began to break the force of the wind. The construction required precise angling, each tier slightly inward from the one below, creating a dome that would support its own weight through compression. Through occasional breaks in the storm, Aaron caught glimpses of her competitors. Zeal had anchored a thermal dome that pulsed with energy, melting any snow that touched its surface. Lurax hovered within a sphere of manipulated gravity that kept the elements at bay. Karg and the others had deployed various forms of smart shelters that assembled themselves with minimal input. As Aaron placed the final blocks to close the dome of her igloo, leaving only a small entrance tunnel, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The structure wasn't perfect. Ideally, she would have had more time to allow the blocks to center together, but it would serve. She crawled inside, pulling her pack through the entrance before sealing it with a final block that could be moved for access. The sudden silence was almost shocking after hours in the howling wind. Inside the igloo, the temperature already felt noticeably warmer than outside, a testament to snow's insulating properties. Aaron's breath clouded before her face as she unpacked her supplies, arranging them methodically on the igloo's floor. From her pack, she produced a small, polished disc of ice, carefully shaped during her block-cutting process. This would serve as a lens to focus the dim sunlight that occasionally penetrated Glacier 9's cloud cover. It was a technique that seemed absurd on a world this cold, using ice to make fire. While the alien cadets relied on their technological defenses, Aaron prepared for the real test of survival that she suspected would come. The Academy briefings had mentioned magnetic storms, but something in Commander Vorik's tone had suggested more than routine concern. She had studied enough of Glacier 9's patterns to know that the storms weren't merely inconvenient. They were potentially catastrophic for systems reliant on electromagnetic principles. Outside her igloo, The wind suddenly increased in intensity. The light dimmed further as the clouds thickened and took on an ominous purple hue. Erin felt it before she heard it, a strange pressure against her eardrums, a tingling along her skin that had nothing to do with the cold. The magnetic storm had arrived, hours ahead of any predictions. In the distance, she heard the first cries of alarm as sophisticated systems began to fail. The distinct, high-pitched whine of Zeal's thermal dome fluctuated wildly before going silent. The low hum of Lurax's gravity field stuttered and collapsed with a sound like thunder. Erin peered through a small observation hole she had created in her igloo wall. Through the swirling snow, she could see the catastrophic failure of the Academy's vaunted technology. Exosuits flickered as power reserves were drained by the magnetic interference. Smart shelters collapsed as their structural integrity fields failed. Emergency beacons went dark, cutting off any communication with the orbiting Academy vessel. In less than 5 minutes, the magnetic storm had accomplished what no training exercise had managed before. It had equalized the playing field between Earth's primitive technology and the advanced systems of the galactic community. Erin knew she had precious little time. The alien cadets would be in immediate danger without their technological protections. Their bodies, evolved for worlds far different from this frozen hell, would succumb to the cold within minutes. She worked quickly, positioning her ice lens at the observation hole, where a faint shaft of sunlight occasionally broke through. When the next break in the clouds came, she held a small bundle of dried moss, brought from Earth specifically for this purpose, at the focal point of the lens. The concentrated sunlight created a pinpoint of heat intense enough to ignite the moss. A wisp of smoke rose, and then a tiny flame took hold, the first human-built fire on Glacier 9. Erin nurtured the flame carefully, adding small splinters of bone-dry wood from her pack, then larger pieces as the fire established itself. The heat was minimal compared to the technological output of the alien systems, but it was reliable, impervious to magnetic interference, and, most importantly, it was working. The smoke found its way out through small ventilation gaps Erin had intentionally left in the igloo structure. As the fire grew, the interior temperature began to rise, not to comfortable levels, but enough to ensure survival. Outside, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Through her observation hole, Erin could see the desperate movements of the alien cadets as they struggled against the cold that now penetrated their disabled suits. Some had managed to activate emergency protocols, converting power reserves into brief bursts of heat. But these were temporary measures at best. Erin faced the greatest test of her Academy career, whether to risk venturing out into the lethal storm to save her competitors, those same cadets who had mocked her primitive methods, or to remain safely within her igloo until the storm passed. The decision took less than a heartbeat. Erin grabbed her pack and moved the block, sealing her entrance. The wind nearly knocked her backward as she emerged, the cold biting through her layers with renewed ferocity after the relative warmth of the igloo. Through the whiteout conditions, she oriented herself toward the nearest energy signature, the rapidly fading glow of Zeal's crystalline form. The silicon-based cadet was huddled beside the collapsed remains of their thermal dome, translucent body already showing signs of dangerous cooling as fracture lines began to appear across their surface. "Zeal!" Erin shouted over the wind, dropping to her knees beside the alien. "Can you move?" The crystalline being's vocal structures vibrated weakly. "Systems. Failing. Core temperature. Critical." Erin didn't hesitate. She stripped off her outer parka and wrapped it around Zeal's crystalline form, knowing the alien needed immediate heat more than she did. With strength born of urgency, she half-dragged, half-carried the surprisingly heavy silicon entity toward her igloo. "Primitive. Shelter?" Zeal's voice was barely audible. "Primitive, but functional," Erin replied through chattering teeth, her body already protesting the exposure without her parka. unlike your thermal dome. She managed to maneuver Zeal through the igloo entrance, positioning the alien as close to the small fire as possible. Stay here. I'm going back for the others. Before Zeal could respond, Erin was back in the storm. This time, moving toward where she had last seen Lurax. The wind had intensified, driving ice particles that stung her exposed face like tiny needles. Without her parka, the cold penetrated her remaining layers with frightening speed. She knew she had minutes at most before hypothermia would set in. She found Lurax collapsed in the snow, their hover capabilities completely disabled by the magnetic interference. The jellyfish-like alien's translucent membrane was already showing signs of freezing around the edges. "Lurax, it's Erin!" she shouted, kneeling beside the fallen cadet. The alien's sensory tendrils weakly reached toward her voice. "Cannot. Maintain. Homeostasis. Systems. Offline." "I've got shelter and heat," Erin said, helping the gelatinous being onto her back. "Hold on to me." Lurax's weight pressed against her spine as she trudged back toward the igloo, each step requiring more effort than the last. Her extremities were beginning to lose sensation, a dangerous sign. The igloo seemed impossibly far in the whiteout conditions, and for a moment, Erin feared she had become disoriented. Then she saw it, a faint orange glow where the firelight shone through the snow blocks. With renewed determination, she pushed forward, practically falling through the entrance with Lurax still clinging to her back. Inside, Zeal had recovered enough to move closer to the fire, their crystalline structure beginning to regain its characteristic luster. "You returned," Zeal said, the surprise evident in their harmonic tones. "Of course I did," Erin gasped, helping Lurax settle near the fire. "That's what teammates do." She had no time to rest. The storm was worsening, and more cadets were at risk. Her body screamed for warmth and recovery, but she forced herself back to her feet. "Keep the fire going," she instructed the two aliens, showing them how to carefully add fuel. "I'm going for Kargu and the others." Outside, once more. Erin fought against the urge to turn back to the warmth of the igloo. The cold had penetrated to her bones now, and her movements were becoming sluggish, the first stages of hypothermia. She focused on her training, on the techniques passed down through generations of her family who had survived in Earth's harshest environments. Controlled breathing, deliberate movement, focus on the task, not the discomfort. She found Kargu attempting to drag themselves toward the shuttle landing site, their massive exosuit now nothing more than dead weight. The reptilian cadet's scales had taken on a grayish hue, a sign of dangerous cold exposure for their species. "Kargu!" Erin called, struggling to be heard over the wind. The large alien turned slowly, their movements lethargic. "Mallory, you survive." "Yes, and you will too," she said, reaching for the emergency release on Karg's exosuit. The mechanism was frozen, forcing Erin to use her bone knife to pry it open. The suit fell away, allowing the reptilian cadet more freedom of movement, despite the loss of protection. "My shelter has fire," Erin explained, supporting the much larger alien as they began to move. "Real fire. No tech needed." Kargu leaned heavily on her, their normally impressive strength sapped by the cold. "Others still out there?" "We'll find them," Erin promised, though she wasn't sure how many more trips her body could endure. By the time they reached the igloo, Erin was supporting Karg more than guiding them. She practically pushed the large reptilian through the entrance before collapsing inside herself, her limbs shaking uncontrollably. Zeal and Lurax had maintained the fire as instructed, and the igloo's interior had warmed noticeably. The three alien cadets huddled around the flames, their diverse physiologies all responding to the primitive heat source in ways their creators had never intended. Erin allowed herself 30 seconds of rest, absorbing enough warmth to stave off the worst of the hypothermia. Then, she pushed herself to her knees. "There are still others out there," she said, her voice hoarse. "And Commander Vorik." "You cannot go again," Karg said, their voice regaining some of its usual resonance as their body temperature rose. "You will not survive another exposure." "And they won't survive if I don't go," Aaron countered, already moving toward the entrance. To her surprise, Zeal's crystalline form shifted, blocking her path. "Then I will go. My structure has stabilized enough." Aaron hesitated, then nodded. "Take this," she said, unwrapping a scarf from around her neck. "Wave it if you get disoriented. I'll watch through the observation hole and guide you back." As Zeal ventured out into the storm, Aaron collapsed beside the fire, allowing herself to truly feel the exhaustion and pain she had been suppressing. Her fingers and toes burned as circulation returned, and her face felt raw where the ice particles had scoured it. Lurax extruded a tendril that gently wrapped around Aaron's wrist, the alien equivalent of a comforting touch. "Your methods, most unexpected. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways," Aaron replied with a tired smile. "Especially when they can't be disrupted by a magnetic storm." Through her observation hole, Aaron tracked Zeal's progress, occasionally shouting guidance when the crystalline being seemed to lose direction in the whiteout. Within 20 minutes, Zeal returned with 2 more cadets, both smaller aliens whose species names Aaron still struggled to pronounce. Over the next hour, through coordinated rescue efforts, they managed to bring in all but one of the remaining cadets and, finally, Commander Vorik himself. The reptilian instructor's scales had faded to an alarming gray-white, his eyes dull as Aaron and Kargu pulled him through the igloo entrance. "Impossible," were Vorik's first words as he registered the shelter and the fire. "This should not be viable." "And yet here we are," Aaron replied, too tired for deference. 11 survivors in a snow house with a fire built using an ice lens. As the group huddled in the increasingly crowded igloo, Aaron organized them by need. Those most affected by the cold, closest to the flames. Others arranged to maintain body heat efficiently. The aliens followed her directions without question, the normal academy hierarchy dissolved by their shared brush with death. "We need to expand the shelter," Aaron explained, showing them how to cut and place additional snow blocks. "And we need more fuel for the fire." Under her guidance, the alien cadets, creatures who had navigated starships and manipulated gravity, learned to pack snow and stack blocks. Those with appropriate appendages were taught to collect the small, lichen-like growth that clung to rocks protruding through the ice, one of the few organic substances native to Glacier 9 that would burn. Commander Vorik watched silently at first, his reptilian features unreadable. But as hours passed and the shelter grew from a simple igloo to a complex of connected chambers, he began to ask questions, not in the demanding tone of an instructor, but with the genuine curiosity of a student. "How did you know the storm would affect our technology?" he finally asked, as Aaron demonstrated how to properly ventilate the expanded shelter. Aaron paused, considering her answer carefully. "I didn't know for certain. But I've learned that in extreme environments, complexity becomes vulnerability. The more components that can fail, the more likely something will." She gestured to the fire, now burning steadily, in a pit lined with stones they had excavated from beneath the ice. "This has one component, fuel. Your thermal generators have thousands." Vorik's scales had begun to regain some of their color, the red hue returning gradually. "The Academy has emphasized technological solutions for generations. We may have overlooked the value of simplicity." "Technology is valuable," Aaron acknowledged, "but it should enhance our inherent abilities, not replace them." She held up her hands. "These have been keeping humans alive in harsh conditions for hundreds of thousands of years. Sometimes, they're the only tools we need." As the hours passed, the storm showed no signs of abating. The magnetic interference continued to render all communications and advanced technology useless. Yet, within the growing snow complex, 11 beings from worlds spanning the galaxy found themselves surviving, and even thriving, using techniques that predated interstellar travel. Aaron taught them to conserve body heat, to recognize the signs of cold injury in different species, to use the properties of snow and ice to their advantage rather than fighting against them. In turn, she learned about their homeworlds and the natural survival techniques their ancestors had used before technology had made such knowledge seem obsolete. Zeal, whose crystalline form had first mocked Aaron's primitive methods, now worked alongside her to refine the ice lens, creating a more efficient tool for fire starting by applying principles of crystallography from their homeworld. "On my planet," Zeal explained, as they carefully shaped the ice, "my ancestors used natural crystal formations to focus light before we developed artificial means. I had forgotten these techniques existed outside of historical archives." "That's the thing about fundamental knowledge," Aaron replied. "It never becomes truly obsolete, just temporarily forgotten." By the second day, they had established a routine. Teams rotated duties, maintaining the fire, expanding and reinforcing the shelter, gathering fuel, and melting ice for drinking water. The hierarchy of the academy seemed distant and irrelevant compared to the immediate needs of survival. Commander Vorik recovered enough to resume some leadership, worked alongside the cadets rather than above them. Aaron noticed how he observed and adopted her methods, occasionally adding refinements based on his own species' experiences with extreme environments. "Your Earth," he said during a quiet moment as they reinforced one of the shelter's walls. "It has many such environments, places that test survival in this way." Aaron nodded. "Deserts, tundra, mountains, deep oceans. We evolved on a world of extremes. Each generation learned from the last, passing down knowledge through direct experience. The Confederation has relied on technology to overcome environmental challenges for so long," Vorik admitted, "that we may have lost something valuable in the process." "Not lost," Aaron corrected gently. "Just forgotten. It can be relearned." As the 48-hour mark approached, the storm finally began to diminish. The magnetic interference weakened, allowing emergency systems to reactivate. The cadets' exosuits, retrieved and brought into the shelter, began to power up in diagnostic mode. The extraction shuttle's signal pinged on Commander Vorik's communicator, confirming their survival and announcing imminent arrival. Aaron felt a strange reluctance as she helped the others prepare for departure. The snow complex they had built together, a structure that should not have been possible according to Academy protocols, had become something more than a shelter. It stood as tangible proof of what could be accomplished without reliance on technology. When the extraction team arrived, their reaction to the snow complex was exactly what Aaron had expected: disbelief, followed by skeptical analysis. Academy instructors in fully powered exosuits moved through the chambers, scanning the structures and the still-burning fire with expressions of scientific curiosity. "Impossible," one instructor muttered, examining the ice lens that had started their first fire. "The thermal calculations alone." "Not impossible," Commander Vorik corrected, his tone carrying new authority. "Merely overlooked in our curriculum." As they prepared to board the extraction shuttle, Aaron took a final look at their creation. In a few days, the structure would be reclaimed by Glacier 9's endless winter, but its impact would resonate beyond this frozen world. On the journey back to the Academy station, Aaron found herself surrounded by the alien cadets who had once viewed her with skepticism or pity. They asked questions about Earth's environments, about the techniques her ancestors had developed, about the philosophy behind her approach to survival. Commander Vorik observed this impromptu seminar with thoughtful silence before finally approaching her as they neared the Academy. "Cadet Mallory," he said formally, though his tone carried newfound respect. "The Academy will be reevaluating certain aspects of our survival curriculum in light of recent events." Aaron maintained a neutral expression. "Sir?" I will be recommending the immediate inclusion of what we might call primitive resilience techniques in our standard training. Vorik continued. Your case study will be featured prominently in this new module. Thank you, sir, Erin replied, hiding her satisfaction. Though I would suggest a different terminology than primitive. Vorik's scales flushed slightly. A fair point. Perhaps foundational resilience techniques would be more appropriate. Much better, Erin agreed with a smile. The Academy station came into view through the shuttle viewport, a marvel of engineering and technology floating in the void of space. Erin admired its sleek lines and efficient design, appreciating the ingenuity it represented. She had never been against technology. She simply understood its limitations and the importance of maintaining core competencies that required no power source beyond the human body and mind. In the days that followed, Erin found her status at the Academy transformed. Instructors who had previously viewed her with condescension now sought her input on training scenarios. Cadets from worlds she had barely heard of requested her guidance on adapting Earth techniques to their physiologies. The Academy's curriculum expanded to include modules on tech-independent survival, environmental adaptation, and what came to be called cross-species indigenous knowledge, a formal study of how different civilizations had originally conquered their native environments before the advent of advanced technology. 3 months after the Glacier 9 incident, Erin received notification of her successful completion of the Academy's requirements. With her certification came an offer to remain as an instructor, the first human to hold such a position. She declined. Your skills would be invaluable to future cadets, Commander Vorik argued when she informed him of her decision. The Academy can offer resources and reach that would allow you to influence survival doctrine throughout the Confederation. I appreciate the offer, Erin replied. But Earth needs these lessons more than the Academy does. She explained her plan to return home and establish a training center in Earth's Arctic region, a place where humans who had become dependent on technology could relearn the fundamental skills of their ancestors. The Academy's experience would inform her curriculum, but her focus would remain on preparing humanity for its expanding role in the galactic community. Earth is the newest member of the Confederation, she said. We can't afford to forget what makes us unique, what we can contribute beyond just adopting established technologies. Vorik considered her words, then nodded slowly. Your planet produced you, Mallory. Perhaps it has more to teach us than we initially assumed. On her final day, Erin stood in the Academy's observation dome, watching the stars and contemplating the journey home. A familiar crystalline form approached, refracting light in distinctive patterns. You are leaving, Zeal stated, not a question. Tomorrow, Erin confirmed. My transport is scheduled for Earth Direct. The crystalline being was silent for a moment, internal structures shifting in what Erin had learned to recognize as contemplation. I have requested assignment to Earth Sector for my first deployment. Zeal finally said, Your world interests me now. Erin smiled. It's not an easy place. Extremes of temperature, varied environments, unpredictable weather. Precisely why it interests me, Zeal replied. I have learned that comfort does not build capability. No, Erin agreed. It doesn't. They stood in companionable silence, watching the endless stars, each potentially harboring worlds as challenging as Glacier 9, as diverse as Earth. Erin thought about the igloo they had built together, about the fire that had saved 11 lives, about the fundamental lesson they had all learned on that frozen world. True resilience came not from the tools one carried, but from the knowledge one preserved and the ability to adapt when those tools failed. It was a lesson as old as humanity, and now, one that would spread throughout the stars. As her transport approached Earth weeks later, Erin pressed her face to the viewport, much as she had done approaching Glacier 9. The blue-white of her home planet evoked memories of the ice world, but with crucial differences: the vibrant colors of life, the dynamic patterns of weather, the evidence of a world in constant flux. The shuttle descended through cloud layers toward the northern training grounds where she would establish her new academy. Below, pristine snowfields stretched to the horizon, broken only by the jagged edges of mountains and the dark line of the boreal forest. Aaron smiled at the familiar landscape. It looked harsh and unforgiving to most observers. But to her, it was simply home, a place of challenge and possibility, where the most valuable technology remained the human capacity to observe, adapt, and overcome. As the shuttle touched down, the cold air of Earth's Arctic rushed in as the hatch opened, a welcome embrace after months in the regulated environment of the Academy Station. Erin stepped onto her native soil, feeling the satisfying crunch of snow beneath her boots. She had left Earth as a cadet with something to prove. She returned as a teacher with something to preserve. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and ice. Somewhere to the north, clouds gathered, promising a storm, nothing like the magnetic maelstrom of Glacier 9, but a challenge nonetheless. Erin welcomed it, just as she welcomed the journey ahead. Survival, she had learned, was not about dominating the environment or hiding from it behind shields of technology. It was about understanding one's place within it, a lesson as relevant among the stars as it had been when the first humans faced the ice ages of ancient Earth. She shouldered her pack, still containing the simple tools that had saved not only her life, but the lives of beings from worlds she had once only dreamed of visiting. The weight felt right, a reminder of the fundamental truth she carried. In the harshest conditions, when all else fails, what remains is what matters most. The wisdom passed down through generations, the knowledge earned through direct experience, and the human ingenuity that had carried her species from cave fires to the stars. Erin took a deep breath of Arctic air and began walking toward her future, leaving footprints in the snow that would soon be covered by fresh powder, temporary marks on a timeless landscape, just as it should be.